Sorry, it just cut out for a second. And I'm just going to upload 2 videos. I'm going to start over.
But that's the perfect time to move on.
Okay, yep, let's move on to informal assessments, right?
Yes.
Well, I mean, we kind of started dabbling in this and informal assessments. And I appreciated Joy's comment that she did back about what is background knowledge, because I didn't understand what it was until she commented back recently, and she said background knowledge is building off what students have already learned in school, whereas funds of knowledge is things like baseball.
Okay.
So I guess I could go in further and deeper into that in a way, and maybe this is a money question, is how do you get the background knowledge of a student who is entering your class for the first time, and not just your class for the first time, but the country for the first time? How do you get that kind of background knowledge? How do you build off of something that you have no real way of translating? And like an uncertainty, like maybe that's part of the informal assessments, is where you go, you say, you show pictures or something and see what they gravitate towards. Maybe that's part of the informal assessments, or show do the puzzle pieces that show the facets of who they are, and maybe that's part of the informal assessments. But I'm just I think that's part of my fear, is like, how can I build on background knowledge that I'm just not entirely unaware of?
And the balance too, like balancing teaching a whole class. And I know it's going to be a lot of trial and error. It's going to be, I'm going to do my best, and the rest you can just hope that it falls into place. But yeah, that could be a money question, for sure. And making the student feel comfortable at the same time. And not forcing knowledge out of them as soon as they show up.
One of the forms of informal assessment was observational checklists. And I was just wondering, like, I guess what kinds of things would you observe? Like,
that's a great question.
Did it have it in there?
Opening it up.
Okay.
Like,
our definitions, but the informal assessments are.
And I also think that observations are great, but to some extent during the first few months that they're there, it's not going to be true to who the student is. It's going to be kind of more of a fight or flight response rather than who they are when they're comfortable.
So here's what it says. Collecting data through observational checklists or rubrics. Communicate effectiveness with the native English-speaking peers. Choice of language when addressing bilingual peers. Large group participation, small group participation, miscommunication with culturally dissimilar peers. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. And then learner preferences, so like individual versus collective, or demonstrative versus reciting. So that's interesting, the idea of also looking at communication with those who are. So would that mean you would, maybe this is like me being silly, but does that mean that you would put a culturally different student next to another one? Not that I'm saying separate them, this isn't the 1960s, but I'm saying, like, we talk about how to make the student comfortable, and surrounding them with similar people is part of that, but I guess would you just, for maybe a day, put them next to, maybe that is.
But I think too, what if you had like mostly, so you had like a large population of American students, and then you had a few ELL students that are both ELLs, but come from different cultures. Maybe that camaraderie of we're both learning together, even though they come from completely, I guess, I don't know, I feel like having that comfort of we're both learning.
We're here together. We're in this together. So maybe if you did like group things in your classroom, you group them together for one thing and then ungroup them for another thing. So they're still getting that opportunity to connect with somebody and be like, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah.
And then they also have the opportunity to go and be with other peers who are not. So I guess that we answered our own question.
Yeah. I just imagine myself learning something. I feel more comfortable, like if you and I were both unaware of something, like brainstorming, coming together, sharing how we feel, and mind you, a language barrier could be between us. But rather than being taught by somebody and feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know, I just feel like, but that could just be another muddy question. I don't know if that's like equitable. But, I don't know.
Repeat your money question. Maybe it is one. How would you phrase that?
Well, would it be equitable to
separate ELLs
or to put them together
all the time or often?
Well, I don't know.
This is a good question.
Yeah.
This is a genuinely good question because I don't know.
Right.
And kind of builds off the first question that we had.
Right, yeah.
Where it's like, I don't know. Like, I would like to put my ELL students together, but at the same time, that's also segregating them as a group.
Yeah.
And that's also, like...
Right. There's pros and cons to both.
Making them... But it's also super important that they have somebody there who knows what they're struggling with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So maybe would it be reasonable to... Or maybe would you suggest...
Like, what situations would be appropriate to pair ELLs together? And that could be both the same culture, same language speaking, or two different language and cultures together. While you're at that, I have to go to the bathroom.
To place ELL... She just ran into my cat. Okay, to place ELLs together. I don't know. To me, I think that this is such a tough one, and this is a good muddy question because I feel that it is important to have these ELL students be together and feel that camaraderie and feel not alone, because we talk about how all the time with their culture and how they feel like, especially we'll get to the Cambodia video at the end, but how like the students in that video feel so alone because they're isolated from their own culture and they're also trying to learn a new language, so they really are just so alone in this. And it worries me that if I place an ELL student by themselves with a group of English speaking students, that they might get put by the wayside with those students who are just like, well, we're gonna have a discussion while you just listen, I guess. But being able to have the ELL student be with another ELL student is a good question, because I just don't know.
I wonder if, like, I don't know. I feel like there should be, when they aren't paired, that there should be, like, a common, like, understanding in the class of like, ways to, like, help them. Like, pointing, or if there's a discussion, like, I guess technology where the student can type in something and have it be translated.
And teaching your classroom those norms of behavior, expectations when it comes to interacting with an ELL student, but also strategies in which you can communicate effectively and teach them well. So having them be, like with Alfonso, he was so excited to teach me Spanish, and I think kids are naturally excited to, and I can't speak for all of them, but share and guide and teach, and I hope that that's what they would want.
Or like if a student can't fully participate, like not as much as other students, then have them be like, if they're gonna come up and put something on the board, then have that student be the one to do it. Or, I don't know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tricky one.
It is a tricky one. It's a great question.
It's a great question. Yeah. What would you do? Let's go.
Do you want to talk about the Cambodia?
Yes.
Because we have like a half hour, and honestly, we could
talk about it for the
whole
video.
That's
a good idea.
Okay.
First impressions.
First, my immediate impression was, this is not a culture that I know really anything about. I know a minimal amount about this culture, and watching these, would you call them second generation or first generation? First generation students talk about their experience as a student learning English and losing a part of themselves made me realize how important our job is as teachers to give them the tools to not just effectively communicate in English, but to also communicate with their parents still.
Yeah. To show them that their language and their culture is important too. But I think the biggest thing about that video, and like I had already known that like first generation students can tend to lose that language and not even communicate with their own parents or other family members. But I don't know, it's still so shocking. Like even though like I've known that it's definitely possible, it's still really shocking and so sad.
Well, I've heard stories of students who lost their home language because the parents refused to speak to them.
That too, I've heard of that too.
Because they refused to speak it to them in language because they're like, I need you to be successful, and that means you learned English. You don't learn this language. You're done learning this language. You know it enough to communicate minimally with and so they lose it because their parents just want them to be successful.
But it also makes me so angry because that is the level to which we raise our culture to be this.
Our language.
You know, it's like we can continue this cycle of you have to learn English to be successful because we are, you know, the nation. And it's the way and the reputation and the associations that happen with American culture that make these families feel like that's their only option.
And like it just seemed like it losing their language, it's like they want to be successful. But I remember there was like a mother at the preschool, and she also told me a similar thing. She was like, I don't want you to speak too much Spanish to him because I want him to be good at English, like a preschooler 4 years old. And I was like, I don't know, in just my mind, I feel like it should be the opposite. Like you should be fighting to have the students keep their language. Because like my home language has always just been Spanish, and like if the home language is just that language, there's still a bigger risk of losing it. Like sometimes mine isn't that good.
Right. Yeah.
Because like school, work, everything else, the whole like friends.
Yeah.
And I think this goes into the English-only laws and how some states have adopted this idea that it's so important that we just speak English, no Spanish anywhere, no nothing. And then I go into, like, I'm going to be doing my internship at Birchwood Elementary. I walk into Birchwood Elementary, and it's so, it celebrates so much of this high Hispanic population, because you walk in and on the door there's two of the exact same poster, one in Spanish, one in English. And so it's sort of this like acceptance of like we have different cultures of this school, and we are not going to ignore that. And even the secretary at Birchwood, who's just like the most wonderful woman you've ever met in your entire life, who's Spanish speaking. And a lot of the teachers will have her, they'll give her a newsletter that they want to send home, and they'll have her translated into Spanish. And I think the idea of walking into a school with a high Hispanic or just ELO population in general and have it just ignore that and just say, nope, this is where we speak English. This is it. That's all you get to know. Like, no translators, no other representation of their own language, nothing. Like it's an English only school, therefore you will only speak English here. It's just sad, and it's the reason why so many cultures are getting sort of lost in America.
Like I was thinking, while you were saying that about how that boy was talking about how when he goes home he just goes in his room or something. And like how, and in the video he was saying how like, oh, it would be so easy if my parents just spoke English, or it would be so easy if I was just American. And I was like, I just can't imagine like how much that affects your self-esteem, your identity, and like almost like makes you jealous or like see other people in higher, like your peers, your classmates are in a like they're better than you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is so crazy.
Because their language is spoken both at school
Constantly
and
feel
at
like
home.
you're inferior.
Yep.
And this, I wrote this in my response too, and I cannot compare all to these students, but I'm the first one to go to college in my family, and past like 10th grade, maybe 9th grade, my family couldn't help me with homework. And it's not a cultural difference, I guess, but it just reminded me of like going home and feeling like the resources available to me to be successful were limited, and I had to go to like other friends and families, parents, or use
like that sort of academic language, I guess you could say.
Exactly, and that wasn't encouraged in my home as much as it could have been. Thankfully, I could, surpass that and whatnot, but just even comparing that to like a cultural standpoint, not feeling encouraged in your own, or even feeling like a traitor to your own family, without a choice, because, there's this discrepancy between these two lifestyles that are being lived in one household that are just so distant, and it breaks my heart.
May I ask you, if you feel comfortable, what it was like for you as an ELL student growing up in elementary school?
I feel like elementary was actually pretty good.
That's great.
I think the hardest was high school. High school was really hard. Like, I definitely remember feeling, I guess, like, in ELL terms in elementary, it was easy because there was so many ELLs. I went to, like, a very Latino and Black school.
Yeah.
And,
so there was that camaraderie that we were
there was a lot of
you could
ELLs.
speak to.
Yeah. And, yeah, I just honestly don't remember, like, feeling that conflict until high school. I went to a mostly white, very rich high school, and I remember that's when I felt like those feelings of like feeling less than, or wishing my parents had better jobs or spoke English or were and I think I don't know.
That's good.
Even like the ability to have home be like a place of community. Like, I am privileged to have parents who are very inviting and like want people over. My friends, they're like, if you're going anywhere, I want your friends to come here. I want this to be a place of like community, like I said, which I think is important, to have that openness and stuff. But to be fearful or to have your parents kind of be hesitant, I couldn't, like, that's hard. Totally.
Yeah, my parents were I think it was really hard in high school because that's when I like when you want to make friends and you want to like go out and do things, and my parents were so scared to let me go out or didn't want me to go out, and I would have to be home by like 8 all through high school. And that was very, very hard. And then coming to college, like, there's so many things, and I can't really think of them off the top of my head, but like things that I just hadn't experienced that for other people it's like, oh, like you haven't?
Yeah.
Like, I guess like riding down the river, like with floating.
Oh, yeah.
I
hadn't done that before either until I went to college, if that makes you feel better.
Yeah. I just remember, like, my friends
I was drowned.
Oh,
It's a story for another time.
Oh my god.
Yeah, just like little things, I don't know, just little things where I'm like, what? And I don't know.
There's certain like cultural aspects, like maybe we can talk about this. We're overage now, so obviously. But like, was drinking something that was like very different for you? And I mean, I'm not to say that we're all so drunk in high school all the time, but naturally there was a curiosity towards drinking when you were in high school, and I think if I were to sort of talk about anybody else's culture, I could talk about my fiance, who is he is second generation or third generation Hispanic, and his mom was a pretty heavy drinker when he was in high school, and it was really hard for him. And I think it was that was part of his culture, and so I think that was part of the reason he didn't drink until he was 21, because I think there was that sort of fear of,
I didn't either.
Like, I don't want,
I don't
want to fall into that, because his mom just, like, became really depressed and just drank a lot, and it scared him, and I think that, it's also very much so, I mean, we're getting married, and one of the things that we talk about is, like, what are we going to have to drink at the wedding?
Yeah.
My parents are like, just wine and beer is fine. Whereas his parents are like, we're from Texas.
Yeah.
You're going to have hard alcohol there. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think drinking is a very poignant part of, because drinking is such an important part of people's culture. Like, you drink at weddings, you drink to celebrate life, and it's like, I mean, what is it? I think the cheers, the toast in Russian is L'chaim or something like that, which means to life, and they drink to that.
Yeah.
So it's that could be Jewish too. I think that might be Hebrew. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Fiddler on the Roof, which is probably not a good thing to think about when you're thinking about Jewish culture. Anyway, I did have a muddy question for this video. And it had to do with, how do I, as a teacher who doesn't share a language with these students or these parents, how do I make sure I preserve their culture? Because that was one of the things that they were starting to get to at the end of the video, but I don't think they really delved into it, was this, how do we preserve the culture so the student doesn't lose that part of themselves? And so that's, I mean, I don't know if we want that to be a muddy question, but that's my muddy question of, like, how, I don't know how to do that. And that scares me to be able to make sure that I'm not being, or not doing them a disservice to ignore that part of themselves. And, like, how do I build off their language too? Like,
I know. I feel like it's something that has to be a daily thing, like not just like one activity here, one activity there. Like, I'm just thinking, the first thing that came to my mind was like the Funds of Knowledge, like thinking about your own lens. Like, if we brought that into our classroom, it was like, I don't know, every time we had a discussion, we could always refer back to our lenses and like how that affects our perception. But I feel like it's like a daily thing.
Yeah,
it has to be.
Yeah,
it has to be.
And a manner and how you act and the words you say and the things you do. Everything has to be kind of pointing to that. Yeah. And the love languages too. I am having to see or seeing the Cambodian video, and that guy talking about how what love is different in Cambodian culture. My like second mom growing up was Filipino, and it was very much the same, like just harsh love. Like, there's people in the Philippines who don't have food, you better eat this, and it's very like kind of harsh. Or in our perception, I think American culture is very like fostering and very like nurturing, kind of almost too much. But my Filipino mama, just very like, you need to do better, just very like strict and straightforward.
Yeah.
And I benefited a lot from that, and I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do that at all. But it was so interesting because the Love Languages book,
I have it right here, which is why we're referencing
something that I've known for years and constantly like think about. Yeah.
I didn't until this class.
Really?
Yeah.
When Casey and I got engaged, I told you guys this already, but I'm going to mention it, so join us. Casey's mom gave this to me, and he and I have been reading it so we can learn each other's love language. And I'm finding it really beneficial, but I'm also finding that it does have flaws. There are these flaws to it where it is really boxing in this idea of love, when love is expressed in so many different ways. I mean, yes, those are some pretty good ways, but I guarantee you I could find like 2 or 3 more ways that are not there. And I think comparison is a good example that the Cambodian children really go through, is if I'm comparing you to another child, that's me showing you that I love you.
Right.
Yeah.
As harsh as it seems to you, that is a sign of affection to me. Or me not coming home, like at a decent time because I'm working, that's me showing you I love you.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I almost like wish hard work was in here because like the work that I'm doing in school and at my job are very much so to provide for myself and Casey, which is a point of like I love you and I am willing to sacrifice this part of myself in order to make sure that we are successful as a unit.
Yeah.
And that's not in here. And so I think that is something that this is so widely accepted and I really do enjoy some of it, but it's limiting.
Yeah.
And I think it goes into the first article that we talked about like we're too broad sometimes and like these overarching themes aren't going to help us effectively communicate with other people.
I just didn't, when I saw him talk about it, I never perceived it as a cultural perspective. I was
but
like,
it totally is.
And thinking about it as like an American idea or Western idea completely changed my opinion about it and my perspective on it and thought, what else is there out there that are culturally fused or developed through our culture that are not at all comparable to the culture of other people. And it got my fingertip going because I was like, oh, what else is there? If this is what I've been basing my knowledge about what love is, then what about these other aspects? Which is kind of a duh moment, you know, like, why didn't I think about this?
And I almost think of love languages as like respect too.
Yeah.
Like think of respect languages maybe, and how in other cultures, and we talk about this constantly, not making eye contact is a sign of respect. And there is that miscommunication amongst two different cultures where we are assuming, we're interpreting one thing and giving back the other, even though our interpretations are wrong. So it's it's an interesting point. I did want to talk about for a second the little boy. Well, not little. I mean, he's an adult now, but who was talking about the gang that how that one mother thought he was a part of a gang. I didn't quite catch what, because I know it was about a gun or something, but I didn't quite catch if he said exactly what he had said to the girl. Do you remember? I don't remember if he said exactly what he had said to the girl. I don't think he did, but it was something where he said something and it was misinterpreted, and this mom was like, and probably the little girl misinterpreted it to her mom, and her mom interpreted it a different way. And I mean, there's so many. That's why the major of communication is so interesting to me, because there are so many levels of communication, and then there's so many levels of interpretation and misinterpretation that it could have gone from the little boy to the little girl misinterpreting it to her mom misinterpreting it to the police, who misinterpreted it to the principal, and it's just this constant wave of just,
and it's just elevating.
So it's just like every time. But the thing that made me so mad about that, and he mentioned this too, was the fact that there was no translator called in.
Yeah.
And his parents, he was so alone.
Yeah.
And he was in, 5th grade? I think that's what he said.
I was terrified.
Yeah.
To be accused of something like that at 5th grade without even knowing these what it means, like, oh man. And it's crazy how, like, people, and I might be blowing another stereotype by saying this, but people want to assume the worst, it seems. You know, like elevating it. There's, from what I've seen in stories like these, mind you, there are people who see the best in others, and I'm not saying that they don't. But when things are elevated like that, like you said, it's often like it gets worse. It's worse and worse. Yeah.
That whole situation is like, have you guys heard of, like, I don't know if it's called, like, juvenile pipeline or pipeline to jail?
No.
Oh, no, I have heard of this.
Yeah.
Explain it again, though. I'm not gonna.
I honestly don't even remember exactly, like, how to explain it so well, but it's basically, like, when schools treat kids like this in this way that basically leads them to go to jail as their only other option. Like, I think examples, the biggest reason would be like suspension. Like if a kid is like he gets suspended for gang activity, that's gonna lead him to do more gang activity to go to jail.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Or even the identity placed on them as, oh, I must be a criminal.
Yeah.
Then they're attaching themselves to something that's tangible.
Yeah.
Saying, okay, that's who I am, and that leads to that path. Yeah. Breaks my heart.
Was it in this class or was it in a reading where like they're doing new ways to like suspend kids or I don't know,
I haven't heard of this.
That sounds familiar.
Just like where instead of suspension they do like in school work and they
I remember
that.
I don't think that was this class, but I think this was
Something.
Where it's like they have
431.
to maybe where they have to like be reflective on like what happened and then while also working on their schoolwork, like so they're not behind, but also be reflective and try to make amends.
Yeah, that was I remember that. But
I can't really remember.
it was like positive punishment, pretty much.
Oh
Yeah. Re-altering their state of mind and their thinking about the situation rather than punishing them for doing what they did.
Because so go ahead.
No, because that's what it comes down to. Like if that kid believes in himself or it's in his mind is what matters.
Yeah. I'm constantly thinking about the psychology and the subconscious of certain situations, like how is that affecting him in the long run in his mind? The little tiny details that we constantly perceive are stored away in our brains that store so much information about what happens to us and then is brought out later. And then, when someone does something that is awful, I automatically think, okay, what happened to make them feel like that was their only way out? The psychology of that. And it has to do partially with culture or feeling uncomfortable or unwanted. There's hundreds of different reasons that it could be. But it goes deeper than what we anticipate, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was a pretty good video.
I really enjoyed it. Is there anything else you want to say?
Do we need another money question?
No, and then we have how do I preserve my students' culture?
Oh, okay.
Which we kind of know the answer to, but at the same time it's like
specific.
Yeah, what are specific ways?
Yeah.
I should write that down. What are specific ways? Alright.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think we're good.
Bye, Joy. Until next time with a different drink.
With a different drink.
We have to turn this off. Bye.